You stand on a vast grassland beneath a sky so wide that it seems to stretch forever. The wind moves through endless waves of tall grass, making the landscape ripple like a green ocean. Somewhere in the distance, a herd of wild horses grazes beneath the fading light. Their dark shapes drift across the horizon, occasionally lifting their heads to scan for danger before returning to their meal. Before we settle in, take a moment to leave a comment with your location and local time. It is always fascinating to imagine listeners from different corners of the world sharing the same quiet journey through history. Whether it is midnight in Texas, early morning in London, or a sleepy afternoon in Australia, you are all standing here together on this ancient plain. Now, imagine trying to survive out here. No supermarket, no GPS, no comfortable mattress waiting at home, no car, no transportation. Your feet must be really big. The people living in this world depend entirely on what they can find, hunt, or carry. Life is hard, and every advantage matters. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for a gentle hum. And let's begin our journey tonight. The horses before you are not quite the same as the animals you might see today. Their story stretches back millions of years. In fact, one of the most surprising facts in natural history is that the earliest ancestors of horses evolved in North America, long before cities existed, long before pyramids rose from desert sands. Tiny horse-like creatures wandered ancient forests. These distant ancestors were small enough that you might mistake them for large dogs. They possessed several toes instead of a single hoof, and browsed among leaves rather than grazing on grass. Over countless generations, climate changed, forests retreated, grasslands expanded. The horse adapted. Its legs grew longer. Its body became larger. Speed became essential for survival. You watch a wild herd moving together across the plain. Their coordination is remarkable. One animal notices a disturbance, and within seconds the entire group responds. Their hooves strike the earth in unison. Dust rises behind them. Even now, thousands of years later, there is something mesmerizing about a running horse. The earliest humans felt that same fascination. At first, horses were not transportation. They were food. Archaeological discoveries reveal that prehistoric hunters pursued wild horses across Europe and Asia. Horse bones appear at ancient campsites alongside those of other animals hunted for survival. This official historical fact reminds you that many of humanity's most important relationships begin in surprisingly practical ways. No one is staring at a horse and thinking about future empires. They are thinking about dinner. History often starts that way. You spend time with a group of hunters moving carefully through the grass. They know where the horses drink. They know which valleys the herds prefer. They know when the animals migrate. Observation becomes a survival skill. Every detail matters. Humans learn the habits of horses long before they learn how to control them. One fascinating and little-known fact is that archaeologists can study microscopic wear patterns on ancient horse teeth to understand what those animals ate and where they traveled. Tiny scratches preserved for thousands of years become clues to forgotten landscapes. Imagine explaining your career to someone. What do you do? Oh, I study prehistoric horse teeth. History contains many unexpected professions. The horses themselves remain blissfully unaware. They graze. They run. They avoid predators. They continue living according to rhythms that have existed for generations. You notice how perfectly suited they are to open country. Their eyes sit on the sides of their heads, giving them a broad field of vision. Their long legs allow rapid movement. Their powerful lungs support endurance. Everything about them seems built for motion, and motion catches human attention. The ability to move quickly across large distances is valuable in any age. For prehistoric people, it appears almost magical. You begin to understand why horses become such important figures in myths and legends. Even before domestication, they possess qualities humans admire: speed, strength, freedom. The herd moves again, flowing across the landscape like water. For a moment, you imagine what it would feel like to travel that effortlessly, to cross miles without exhaustion, to move faster than any person can run. The idea seems impossible, yet it plants a seed. Humans are curious creatures. When they encounter something useful, they begin asking questions. Could these animals be approached? Could they be understood? Could they perhaps become partners rather than prey? Nobody knows the answers yet. Historians still debate whether early horse domestication resulted from deliberate experimentation or whether it emerged gradually through thousands of small interactions between people and animals. The evidence remains incomplete. Ancient history often behaves like a puzzle with several missing pieces. Researchers assemble what they can, but some mysteries remain. As the sun sinks lower, the hunters prepare camp. Smoke rises from fires. Conversations drift across the evening air. Beyond the camp, the horses continue grazing. Neither species realizes how much their futures will become intertwined. The horse sees humans as another part of the landscape. Humans see horses as one resource among many. Yet something important is already happening. Observation is creating familiarity. Familiarity is creating understanding. And understanding is preparing the ground for one of the most influential partnerships in history. You watch the herd disappear into the twilight. Their silhouettes grow smaller. Their hoofbeats fade. The grass sways gently beneath the evening breeze. Somewhere beyond the darkness lies a future filled with riders, traders, explorers, farmers, and kings. But none of that exists yet. For now, there is only the ancient plain, the fading light, and a wild horse lifting its head toward the horizon before vanishing into the night. The last shapes of the wild herd disappear into the darkness, but the fascination remains. Morning arrives slowly across the grasslands. A pale sun rises over an ocean of waving grass, and a cool breeze carries the scent of earth and distant rain. You wake among people whose lives are changing in ways they do not fully recognize. Generations have passed since hunters first watched horses from afar. Something new is beginning. The horse is no longer merely an animal to chase. It is becoming an animal worth keeping close. You travel across the vast Eurasian steppe, one of the largest continuous grassland regions on Earth. The landscape seems endless. Hills roll gently into the horizon. Herds move across the plains like drifting clouds. Life here depends on mobility. The seasons change quickly. Water sources shift. Grazing lands must be followed. Communities learn that survival often means moving at the right moment, and horses happen to be exceptionally good at moving. One of the most important historical developments occurs in what is now Kazakhstan, where archaeologists discovered evidence connected to the ancient Botai culture. This official historical event is often cited as one of the earliest known examples of horse domestication. Horse bones appear in enormous numbers. Evidence suggests horses were managed rather than simply hunted. Researchers even found traces indicating that mare's milk may have been consumed. That discovery surprises many people. Most imagine the horse entering history dramatically through warfare or transportation. Instead, one of its earliest contributions may have involved breakfast. History enjoys keeping everyone humble. You spend time observing daily life in a steppe settlement. Children run between tents. Smoke rises from cooking fires. Animals graze nearby. The relationship between humans and horses is becoming more familiar. Not perfect, not easy, but familiar. Wild horses are intelligent and cautious. They possess strong opinions regarding personal space, and those opinions generally involve keeping humans at a respectful distance. Yet certain animals prove more tolerant. Certain people prove more patient. Little by little, trust develops. The process takes generations. No single moment transforms a wild herd into a domesticated one. Instead, thousands of small interactions accumulate. A horse allows a person to approach. A person learns not to startle the horse. The cycle repeats. Gradually, both species adapt. One fascinating little-known fact comes from ancient pottery discovered by archaeologists. Chemical traces preserved inside ceramic vessels suggest that people were processing mare's milk thousands of years ago. That may sound like a minor detail. It is actually a remarkable clue. It reveals that horses were becoming integrated into daily life, not just as animals to observe, not just as animals to hunt, but as animals capable of supporting communities. You sit beside a fire while people prepare fermented mare's milk. The drink has a long history across Central Asia. The taste, however, remains something of an adventure. If modern coffee lovers suddenly found themselves offered a bowl of fermented horse milk instead of a cappuccino, there might be a few questions, possibly several complaints. possibly a formal petition. Fortunately, nobody on the step is asking for your opinion. The horse is becoming useful in ways that matter. Food, milk, hide, bones, mobility. Every contribution strengthens the relationship. You begin noticing something else. Horses possess social instincts that make cooperation possible. They live in groups. They respond to leadership. They communicate through body language. These traits help humans work with them. Imagine attempting to domesticate a particularly stubborn bear. The results would likely be educational, brief, and somewhat painful. The horse offers a better opportunity. Its behavior creates possibilities. Its intelligence supports learning. Its speed offers advantages that few other animals can match. People recognize those advantages, slowly at first, then increasingly clearly. As settlements expand, knowledge spreads, communities share techniques. They learn which animals are easier to manage. They discover better methods for handling herds. Experience accumulates. The horse becomes part of economic life. Ownership begins to matter. A family with healthy horses possesses valuable resources. A family without them faces greater uncertainty. Wealth starts growing four legs. You notice how attitudes change. Earlier generations looked at horses primarily as prey. Now many people look at them as assets, partners, investments. The transformation is subtle but profound. It reshapes the future. Historians still debate whether horse domestication occurred in a single region before spreading outward, or whether multiple communities independently developed similar practices. The evidence continues evolving. New discoveries appear regularly. Ancient history remains full of unanswered questions. That uncertainty is part of its charm. No matter how much we learned, the past still keeps a few secrets tucked away. As the years pass, the horse becomes increasingly woven into daily routines. Children grow up around them. Skills pass from one generation to the next. Experienced handlers learn to interpret movements, moods, and behavior. The bond strengthens. Trust grows. The horse begins changing how people think about distance itself. A herd can move farther than a person carrying supplies alone. A horse can transport resources more efficiently. A community with horses can adapt more easily to changing conditions. Mobility becomes power. The realization spreads. You spend an evening watching herders guide animals beneath a sky filled with stars. The horses move calmly through the darkness. Bells ring softly. Campfires glow in the distance. The scene feels peaceful, ordinary, yet beneath that ordinary moment lies one of the most important turning points in human history. A partnership is forming, not between rulers and armies, not between empires and cities, between people and animals. The consequences will reach every continent. The horse does not know this. The people do not know this. But the future is already beginning to take shape. Every foal born into these managed herds, every lesson learned by a young herder, every shared piece of knowledge, together they are preparing humanity for a world where movement becomes easier, faster, and more ambitious than ever before. And soon, someone will do something that changes everything again. Someone will climb onto a horse's back and discover that the horizon suddenly feels much closer. The horizon no longer feels quite so far away. You stand on the open steppe as morning sunlight spreads across the grasslands. A cool wind brushes past, carrying the scent of wild sage and distant rain. Nearby, horses graze peacefully, unaware that they are about to help humanity make one of the greatest leaps in its history. For thousands of years, people have watched horses run. Now they are beginning to ride them. The idea sounds simple. Climb onto a horse, stay on the horse, travel farther. In reality, it turns out that the second step is significantly harder than it sounds. Gravity remains deeply committed to its work. You quickly discover that early riding is probably not an elegant process. The first riders are experimenting. Saddles do not yet exist in their later forms. Stirrups have not been invented. Techniques are developing through trial, error, and occasional embarrassment. Mostly error. Quite a lot of error. The horses themselves seem understandably skeptical about the arrangement. Yet people persist, because the advantages are extraordinary. For most of human history, distance has been one of humanity's greatest limitations. A healthy person can walk perhaps 20 miles in a day, less with heavy supplies, less in difficult weather, less if someone packed far too much camping equipment because they insisted they might need it. A horse changes the equation. Suddenly journeys become faster. Territories become smaller. Possibilities expand. You ride across the grassland and begin to understand the transformation immediately. The world moves differently from horseback. Hills pass more quickly. Rivers seem closer. Distant landmarks no longer feel impossibly remote. The horse does more than increase speed. It changes perception. The map inside your mind expands. One official historical fact often highlighted by scholars is that horseback riding spread widely across the Eurasian steppes and eventually transformed communication, trade, migration, and warfare throughout much of the ancient world. The consequences are difficult to overstate. Humanity is effectively borrowing another creature's mobility, and mobility changes everything. You spend time among early riders who are learning techniques that future generations will refine into sophisticated traditions. Balance improves. Control improves. Confidence grows. The horse becomes an extension of the rider. Not immediately, not perfectly, but increasingly so. A skilled rider can travel farther, respond faster, and explore more effectively than almost anyone on foot. The difference is revolutionary. One fascinating little-known fact involves ancient riding equipment. Some of the earliest riders likely rode without many of the tools modern equestrians consider essential. Saddles were primitive or absent. Stirrups would not become widespread for centuries. Imagine attempting a long-distance ride under those conditions. Your appreciation for modern technology might increase dramatically. Certain muscles would also become very educational. As riding spreads, communities gain new opportunities. Hunters can pursue game over greater distances. Messengers can travel faster. Families can relocate more efficiently. Explorers can investigate unfamiliar territory. The horse opens doors that previously remained closed. You begin noticing another consequence. Information travels faster. A traveler carrying news can now cover greater distances in less time. Stories spread more rapidly. Trade opportunities become easier to identify. Alliances become easier to maintain. Connection increases, and connection changes societies. People start thinking differently. A place that once felt impossibly distant now feels reachable. A journey that once required weeks now requires days. The world itself seems to shrink. You ride beside merchants crossing open country. Their goods move farther than before. Their networks expand. Their understanding of the world grows. The horse is quietly reshaping economics, without anyone drafting a grand master plan. History rarely follows a master plan. Most transformations begin because people discover useful solutions to practical problems. The horse happens to be an exceptionally useful solution. Historians still debate whether horseback riding spread primarily through migration, cultural exchange, trade, or independent innovation in multiple regions. The answer remains uncertain. Ancient history often resembles a conversation where several important participants left before taking notes. Researchers reconstruct what they can. The mystery remains part of the story. As mobility increases, so does curiosity. Humans have always been curious. Give them a faster way to travel, and they become even more curious. They visit new places, meet new people, discover new resources, encounter unfamiliar ideas. The horse becomes a vehicle for exploration, and exploration changes civilizations. You spend an evening beside a campfire listening to travelers describe distant landscapes, mountains beyond the horizon, rivers larger than anyone imagined, settlements filled with unfamiliar customs. These stories spread because people can move, and people can move because horses help carry them. The relationship becomes increasingly sophisticated. Riders learn how to care for animals properly. Breeders select desirable traits. Knowledge accumulates. The partnership deepens. The horse is no longer simply part of daily life. It is becoming part of humanity's future. One amusing reality remains consistent throughout all of this progress. Horses continue being horses. No matter how important they become, they occasionally stop to investigate random objects, become startled by harmless things, or decide that a patch of grass deserves immediate attention. Civilization may be advancing. The horse still has priorities. Those priorities generally involve food, As sunset paints the grasslands gold, you ride across open country with the wind at your back. The rhythm of hoofbeats feels almost hypnotic. Distance melts away beneath you. For the first time, humanity is experiencing a level of mobility that earlier generations could scarcely imagine. The implications are enormous. Trade routes will grow. Kingdoms will expand. Ideas will travel farther. Entire cultures will emerge around horseback life. Yet tonight, none of those future developments are visible. There is only the rider, the horse, the endless horizon, and the growing realization that the world has suddenly become much larger and much smaller. At exactly the same time, the horizon continues to shrink beneath the rhythm of hoofbeats. What once felt distant now feels reachable. What once seemed impossible now appears merely inconvenient. You travel across ancient landscapes where riders move more confidently with each generation. And soon, humanity discovers that horses can do something even more impressive than carrying people. They can pull speed itself. You arrive in a world entering the Bronze Age. Metal tools are becoming more common. Trade routes are expanding. Kingdoms are growing wealthier. Rulers are searching constantly for advantages over their neighbors. And somewhere on the great grasslands, someone combines horses with one of humanity's most important inventions, the wheel. The result is the chariot. At first glance, it appears surprisingly simple. A lightweight frame, 2 wheels, a team of horses. Yet this invention will reshape entire civilizations. You watch craftsmen carefully assembling chariot wheels. Every component matters. Too heavy and the vehicle slows. Too weak and it breaks. Too expensive and only the wealthiest rulers can afford it. Ancient engineers face many of the same problems modern engineers face. The only difference is that nobody is troubleshooting software. The horses probably appreciate that. One official historical event stands out during this period. The famous Battle of Kadesh around 1274 BCE between the Egyptians and the Hittites featured thousands of chariots and remains one of the largest chariot battles in history. The scale is astonishing. Thousands of horses, thousands of wheels, entire armies built around speed and mobility. The horse is no longer merely helping individuals travel. It is helping shape international politics. You stand beside a road as a royal procession passes. The horses are magnificent. The chariots gleam in the sunlight. Dust rises behind them. The message is clear. Power has arrived. The chariot becomes a symbol as much as a vehicle. Rulers use it to display status. Generals use it to project strength. Nobles use it to separate themselves from ordinary people. Ancient luxury transportation has officially arrived, unlike modern luxury vehicles. However, these models occasionally decide to eat your garden. Every technology has trade-offs. As kingdoms expand, chariots spread across much of the ancient world. Egypt adopts them. The Hittites master them. Mesopotamian states use them. Other cultures develop their own variations. The horse becomes a cornerstone of elite military systems. You spend time watching chariot teams train. The coordination required is extraordinary. Drivers must control speed and direction. Horses must work together. Passengers must maintain balance while carrying weapons or ceremonial equipment. Nothing about the process is easy. A successful chariot crew resembles a carefully synchronized machine. Centuries before factories exist, humans are already creating systems that depend on precision. One fascinating little-known fact involves horse breeding during this era. Some ancient kingdoms maintained specialized breeding programs and exchanged horses as diplomatic gifts. A particularly valuable horse could become an important political asset. Imagine receiving a luxury sports car as part of an international treaty. Now imagine that sports car occasionally decides to roll in the mud. The comparison is imperfect, but not entirely wrong. The horse has become wealth, prestige, influence, power. As you travel through Bronze Age cities, you notice how horse ownership increasingly reflects social status. Maintaining horses requires resources. Maintaining chariots requires even more resources. The result is exclusivity. Not everyone can participate. That exclusivity becomes part of the appeal. Human beings have always enjoyed turning useful things into status symbols. Historians still debate whether chariots were primarily effective battlefield tools or whether their symbolic and political importance sometimes exceeded their military value. The answer likely varies by region and period. Some battles clearly demonstrate their effectiveness. In other situations, prestige may have mattered just as much. History rarely offers a single explanation for anything important. You spend an afternoon in a royal stable where attendants care for valuable horses. The animals receive remarkable attention. Diets are monitored. Equipment is inspected. Training is supervised. These horses matter. Their health influences military readiness. Their performance affects prestige. Their presence communicates power. The horse is becoming woven into the structure of government itself. Meanwhile, outside the palaces and military camps, ordinary people continue using horses for transportation and labor. The grand stories of kings and battles attract attention, but everyday life remains equally important. The horse serves everyone, just in different ways. One person rides to market, another delivers messages, another manages herds, another trains chariot teams. The partnership expands in multiple directions at once. You begin noticing how horses are changing human imagination. Artists depict them, poets describe them, stories celebrate them. The horse is no longer simply an animal. It is becoming an idea, a symbol of speed, a symbol of freedom, a symbol of power. Those meanings will persist for thousands of years. As evening settles across the ancient world, chariots return to stables, horses are brushed and fed, wheels stand quietly beneath fading sunlight. The day's movement slows, but the transformation continues. Every new road, every new trade route, every new kingdom, every new generation, the horse remains present, helping humanity move farther, faster, and more confidently than ever before. And while chariots dominate this age, another development is already approaching. Rulers are beginning to realize that horses can do far more than pull vehicles. Soon, entire empires will depend on horses not merely for prestige, but for communication, administration, and control across territories so vast that earlier generations could scarcely imagine governing them. The age of the great horse-powered empires is drawing near. The chariots roll back into their sheds. The horses settle into their stables. The sun sets over Bronze Age kingdoms. Yet the partnership between humans and horses is only becoming more important. As centuries pass, rulers face a problem that grows larger with every conquest. Winning territory is difficult. Keeping it organized is much harder. You stand on a hill overlooking a vast empire. Villages dot the landscape. Roads stretch toward distant horizons. Merchants travel between cities. Officials carry documents. Farmers work fields hundreds of miles from the capital. The ruler of this empire cannot possibly be everywhere at once, and that creates a challenge. How do you govern enormous distances? For thousands of years, distance has been humanity's enemy. Messages move slowly. Information arrives late. Decisions take weeks or months to travel. A rebellion can begin and end before a ruler even learns about it. Empires need speed. Fortunately for ambitious kings and emperors, horses happen to be very good at speed. You travel into the era of great imperial states, where horses become the nervous system of government itself. One official historical event stands above many others. During the reign of Darius I in the late 6th and early 5th centuries BCE, the Persian Empire expanded and strengthened an extraordinary communication network, connecting vast territories. At the heart of this system stood horses. The famous royal road stretched across hundreds of miles. Relay stations allowed mounted couriers to carry messages with astonishing efficiency. You ride alongside one such courier. The horse beneath you moves steadily over packed earth. Dust rises behind. Villages pass. Rivers are crossed. Hills disappear into the distance. Hours later, another station appears. Fresh horses wait. The rider changes mounts. The journey continues. The message never stops moving. It is a surprisingly elegant solution. One horse becomes tired. Another takes over. The information keeps flowing. In a world without telephones, railroads, or email, this is revolutionary. You quickly understand why empires become obsessed with horse-powered communication. A ruler who receives information quickly makes better decisions. A governor who receives orders quickly governs more effectively. A military commander who receives warnings quickly avoids unpleasant surprises. The horse is transforming administration, not through battle, not through prestige, through paperwork. History contains more paperwork than most people expect. Somewhere behind every great empire is an exhausted official trying to organize documents. The horse helps those documents travel. One fascinating little-known fact involves ancient courier systems. Some relay stations maintained fresh horses specifically for official messengers, creating what was essentially the ancient world's version of express delivery. It lacked tracking numbers, but it worked remarkably well. You spend time at one of these relay stations. Stable hands prepare animals. Couriers arrive and depart. Supplies are organized. Information flows continuously. The place feels alive. Every rider carries news. Every horse carries possibility. The horse has become infrastructure, not a building, not a road, a living form of infrastructure. The concept is remarkable. As empires grow, horses influence trade as well. Merchants travel farther. Markets expand. Regional economies become increasingly connected. A trader can transport information, goods, and ideas across distances that once seemed overwhelming. You accompany a caravan moving through imperial territory. Horses carry supplies. Riders scout ahead. News passes between travelers. The landscape feels connected, unified. The horse helps make that possible. Historians still debate whether improved communication systems drove imperial expansion or whether expanding empires simply demanded better communication systems. The answer is probably both. The relationship reinforces itself. Larger territories require faster communication. Faster communication supports larger territories. The cycle continues. Meanwhile, military leaders are paying close attention. The horse is becoming more versatile than ever. Chariots still exist in some regions, but mounted riders are gaining importance. Horses allow armies to move quickly, scout effectively, and respond to threats over great distances. The implications are enormous. An army that moves faster often gains advantages. A commander who receives information faster often gains advantages. The horse contributes to both. One amusing reality remains constant despite all this sophistication. The horses themselves remain mostly interested in grass. Empires rise and fall. Governments issue decrees. Merchants negotiate contracts. The horse would like lunch. There is something wonderfully grounding about that. You travel east and west through territories connected by horse-powered networks. Roads improve. Relay stations expand. Trade routes grow busier. Different cultures adapt the horse in different ways. Yet a common pattern emerges. The horse shrinks distance. Again and again. Every civilization that masters horse mobility discovers the same thing. The world becomes easier to manage. Not easy, just easier. And that difference matters. You begin noticing how rulers think differently because of horses. A governor can imagine controlling distant provinces because communication exists. A king can imagine administering large territories because information can travel. The horse changes political imagination. That influence may be just as important as any battlefield victory. Sometimes history changes because people gain new abilities. Sometimes history changes because people gain new expectations. The horse creates both. As evening approaches, you stop beside a relay station at the edge of a long road. Fresh horses stand ready. Couriers check equipment. Messages wait to be delivered. The system never truly sleeps. Even at night, riders continue moving beneath the stars. The empire depends upon them. The horse has become the heartbeat of administration, the pulse of communication, the bridge connecting distant communities, and every mile traveled strengthens that connection. Tomorrow, more messages will move, more roads will be built, more territories will be linked together. The horse is teaching humanity how to govern distance itself. Soon, entire cultures will take that lesson even further, building lives so completely around horses that they will seem almost inseparable from the animals they ride. And on the endless grasslands beyond the borders of empire, those horse cultures are already waiting. Beyond the roads, beyond the relay stations, beyond the carefully organized borders of empire, the grasslands stretch endlessly toward the horizon. You leave behind cities and administrative centers and return to the open steppe, where horses are not simply useful tools, they are life itself. The wind sweeps across the plains in long, steady waves. Tall grass bends and rises. Clouds drift overhead like slow-moving ships. Here, mobility is not a luxury, it is survival. You travel among the great nomadic cultures of Eurasia, where entire communities organize their existence around horses. Unlike settled societies that use horses for specific tasks, these people build entire ways of life around equine movement. The difference is profound. A farmer may own a horse. A nomad may feel incomplete without one. You wake before sunrise in a mobile camp. The first sounds you hear are horses moving through the morning mist. Herds graze nearby. Riders prepare for the day ahead. Children learn horsemanship almost as soon as they learn to walk, perhaps sooner than modern safety experts would prefer. Fortunately for the nomads, modern safety experts are several thousand years away. The horse is teacher, transportation, wealth, and companion all at once. One official historical event illustrates this perfectly. During the rise of the great Scythian cultures between roughly the 9th and 4th centuries BCE, horse-centered societies dominated large areas of the Eurasian steppe and developed extraordinary riding skills. Greek observers who encountered these riders often described them with admiration and astonishment. The mobility seemed almost unbelievable. You understand why? You ride alongside experienced horsemen and horsewomen, crossing landscapes that would exhaust most travelers on foot. They navigate rivers, valleys, and hills with confidence. The horse transforms geography. What appears vast to others feels familiar to them. What seems remote feels connected. Distance becomes a different concept altogether. One fascinating little-known fact comes from ancient burial sites discovered across the Eurasian steppe. Archaeologists have uncovered tombs containing horses buried alongside important individuals, suggesting the animal held deep cultural and symbolic significance. The horse was not merely property. It occupied a place within identity and belief. That level of importance speaks volumes. You spend time observing herd management, which turns out to be an astonishingly sophisticated skill. Riders monitor grazing conditions, weather patterns, breeding cycles, and migration routes. The steppe is not empty wilderness. It is a carefully understood environment. Every water source matters. Every seasonal change matters. Every horse matters. The relationship between people and animals becomes incredibly refined. You begin noticing that riders often maintain multiple horses. This allows them to rotate mounts during long journeys, preserving energy and increasing endurance. It is an elegant system. One horse rests, another works. The journey continues. The result is mobility on a scale that settled societies often struggle to match. Imagine owning several vehicles and switching between them during a road trip to keep each one fresh. It sounds absurd. Yet on the steppe, the principle works remarkably well. The horses probably approve. At least the resting ones do. As horse cultures become more sophisticated, their influence grows. Trade routes expand. Cultural exchanges increase. Political power shifts. The horse is not merely supporting these developments, it is enabling them. You travel through camps where riders can cover distances that seem astonishing by ancient standards. Information moves quickly. Goods move quickly. People move quickly. Speed creates opportunities, and opportunities create power. Historians still debate whether the extraordinary success of steppe societies resulted primarily from horse mobility, environmental adaptation, military innovation, or social organization. Most likely, all four played important roles. History rarely rewards single explanations. Complex systems produce complex outcomes. The horse simply happens to be at the center of many of them. You begin noticing another remarkable feature of horse-centered cultures: flexibility. A settled city depends on fixed infrastructure. A nomadic camp can move. That mobility provides advantages during difficult seasons, changing political circumstances, or shifting resource conditions. The horse makes adaptation possible. You spend an afternoon watching riders practice skills that appear almost effortless. They guide horses with subtle movements. They communicate through posture and balance. Horse and rider seem synchronized. The partnership has reached a level of sophistication unimaginable to the hunters who watched wild herds thousands of years earlier. Trust has become expertise. Observation has become mastery. One humorous reality remains constant. No matter how skilled the rider, horses occasionally decide that some random patch of grass deserves immediate investigation. History books rarely mention these moments. Perhaps they should. Great civilizations have always depended upon animals that sometimes become distracted by lunch. As evening settles across the grasslands, riders return to camp. Herds gather nearby. Fires flicker beneath an enormous sky filled with stars. The scene feels peaceful. Yet these same riders possess the ability to travel farther and faster than most people of their era can imagine. That capability changes history repeatedly. Empires must adapt. Trade networks must adapt. Military strategies must adapt. The horse-centered cultures of the steppe force the wider world to rethink distance, mobility, and power. And they are not finished. Far beyond the campfires, roads continue stretching across imperial territories. Merchants continue traveling. Couriers continue carrying messages. Soon, those worlds will become increasingly connected through horse-powered communication networks, so efficient that information will move across continents with astonishing speed. The horse is about to become not just the master of distance, but the messenger of civilization itself. The campfires of the steppe fade behind you. The riders disappear into the vast grasslands. Yet the lesson they taught remains clear. A horse can conquer distance. Now humanity is about to discover something even more powerful. A horse can conquer delay. You travel along a busy road beneath a bright morning sky. The road stretches across hills and valleys, linking towns, cities, forts, and administrative centers. Merchants move goods. Travelers exchange stories. And everywhere, riders are carrying information. The horse is becoming the fastest communication technology on Earth. Long before telephones, long before radio, long before the internet. There is only one reliable way to send a message quickly across land. Put it on a horse, then hope the horse feels cooperative. Fortunately, most of them do. You arrive at a relay station positioned beside a major route. Fresh horses stand ready in nearby stables. Couriers arrive covered in dust. Documents are exchanged. New riders depart almost immediately. The process is efficient, almost mechanical. One rider arrives, another leaves. The message keeps moving. One official historical event illustrates the power of these systems. During the height of the Mongol Empire in the 13th century, an extensive relay network known as the YAM connected vast territories stretching across Eurasia. The system impressed travelers from many regions. Fresh horses waited at stations. Messengers moved rapidly. Information crossed enormous distances. For its time, it was revolutionary. You spend the day following a courier carrying official messages. The horse beneath him maintains a steady pace. Villages pass. Rivers are crossed. Hills rise and fall. Hours later, another relay station appears. The rider changes horses. The journey continues. The horse has become part of a communication machine. Not a machine made of metal. A machine made of roads, riders, animals, and organization. The effect is extraordinary. Governments receive information faster. Merchants receive news faster. Military commanders receive warnings faster. The horse transforms decision-making itself. One fascinating little-known fact is that some ancient and medieval communication systems maintained special relay horses reserved exclusively for official use. Ordinary travelers could not simply borrow them. These animals had important jobs. They were essentially the priority shipping service of their day. The horse, it seems, was delivering express mail centuries before anyone invented overnight delivery. You spend time inside a relay station as workers prepare fresh mounts. The atmosphere feels busy but controlled. Stable hands check animals. Officials organize documents. Couriers eat quickly before departing again. Everyone understands that time matters. A delayed message can affect trade, politics, security, even entire regions. The horse helps reduce those delays. You begin noticing how information changes the world. A merchant who learns about shortages in another city can adjust plans. A governor who receives warnings can prepare. A ruler who understands events sooner can respond more effectively. Knowledge becomes power, and horses carry knowledge. The connection seems simple, Yet it transformed civilizations. Historians still debate whether improved communication networks were the primary reason large empires succeeded, or whether political stability allowed those networks to flourish in the first place. The answer may be both. Better communication strengthens empires. Stronger empires invest in communication. Each supports the other. History often works through such cycles. The horse stands at the center of this one. You ride farther along the route and encounter travelers from many regions, different languages, different customs, different clothing. Yet they share one thing. They all depend on movement, and movement depends on horses. The animal becomes a bridge between cultures. Messages travel, ideas travel, technology travels, stories travel. Sometimes rumors travel even faster. Human beings remain remarkably efficient at spreading rumors. A relay horse carrying gossip might have been the most unstoppable force in history. One amusing thought is that many ancient couriers probably felt exactly the same frustrations as modern delivery workers. Bad weather, long hours, unexpected delays, confusing directions. The details change. The experience remains surprisingly familiar. You spend the afternoon watching riders arrive and depart beneath a blazing sun. The rhythm becomes almost hypnotic. Hooves on packed earth, harnesses rattling, voices exchanging instructions. Then silence as another messenger disappears down the road. The horse makes all of it possible. Without horses, information slows dramatically. With horses, entire regions become connected. The world feels smaller, not because geography changes, because communication improves. You begin imagining how remarkable this would seem to the hunters from Part 1. Those early observers watched wild horses vanish into the distance. They could never have imagined relay stations, administrative networks, international communication systems. Yet all of it grows from the same relationship. Observation became trust. Trust became domestication. Domestication became mobility. Mobility became communication. Communication became civilization. The chain stretches across thousands of years. As sunset approaches, the relay station grows quieter. Some horses rest. Others prepare for night travel. Messages continue moving even after darkness arrives. Civilization never truly sleeps, not when information is valuable. The horse works through the evening, through the night, through the centuries, and with every mile traveled, distant places become a little closer together. Soon, horses will help shape a very different world, one filled with castles, noble families, armored riders, and social systems built around equine power. The roads remain busy, the messages keep moving, and somewhere beyond the horizon, the age of knights is already beginning. The messages continue traveling through the night. Relay stations glow softly beneath the stars. Couriers come and go. Hoofbeats echo along distant roads. Yet while some horses carry information, others are beginning to carry something else: status, power, prestige. You move forward into the medieval world, where castles rise above valleys, stone walls surround growing towns, and noble families compete for influence across kingdoms. And once again, the horse stands near the center of everything. You approach a castle at dawn. The morning mist clings to the fields below. Stable hands are already awake, moving between rows of horses. Armor is being cleaned. Saddles are inspected. Harnesses are adjusted. The atmosphere feels purposeful, because horses are expensive, very expensive. A good horse represents wealth. A great horse represents serious wealth. A war horse represents the medieval equivalent of arriving in a luxury vehicle that can also climb hills, cross rivers, and occasionally save your life. The horse has become a symbol, and medieval society takes symbols very seriously. One official historical event helps illustrate this world. In 1066, during the famous Norman conquest of England led by William the Conqueror, mounted knights played an important role in reshaping English history. The event reminds you that horses were no longer simply helping civilizations function. They were helping decide the fate of kingdoms. You watch mounted warriors training outside the castle walls. The horses move with impressive confidence. Riders guide them through complex maneuvers. Years of practice are visible in every movement. Nothing about this partnership happens by accident. Horse and rider must learn together, trust one another, adapt to one another. The result is extraordinary. The horse becomes an extension of human capability. You spend time inside the stables, where another reality becomes obvious. Maintaining horses requires work, a lot of work. Feed must be gathered, water must be supplied, equipment must be repaired, animals must be groomed. Someone always seems to be cleaning something. Historical paintings often focus on kings and knights. They rarely focus on the stable worker wondering why 3 horses chose the exact same moment to create extra chores. History is full of unsung heroes. One fascinating little-known fact involves medieval horse breeds. Contrary to popular imagination, the giant war horses of legend may not always have been as enormous as later stories suggest. Some were certainly powerful animals, but many were likely smaller and more agile than modern audiences expect. Historians continue studying skeletal remains to better understand these horses. Reality often proves more nuanced than myth, and yet the horses remain impressive. You travel through villages where horses serve purposes beyond warfare. Farmers use them for transportation. Merchants rely on them to move goods. Travelers depend on them to cross long distances. The horse supports every layer of society, not just the nobility, not just the military. Everyone. As kingdoms expand, horse breeding becomes increasingly specialized. Some horses are bred for strength, some for speed, some for endurance. The level of expertise grows steadily. People begin selecting traits with remarkable care. The horse is no longer simply being used. It is being shaped. One important innovation appears during this period: improvements in saddle design. Better saddles provide riders with greater stability and control. The change sounds small. It is not. Small improvements often produce enormous consequences. A better saddle improves comfort. Improved comfort increases effectiveness. Effectiveness changes outcomes. History sometimes turns on surprisingly practical details. You ride alongside merchants traveling between towns. Their horses carry supplies through muddy roads and crowded marketplaces. Trade expands. Communities grow. The horse remains central to economic life. Without it, commerce slows dramatically. The animal continues performing countless jobs simultaneously: transportation, agriculture, communication, military service, trade. Few technologies have ever been asked to do so much. Historians still debate whether mounted knights dominated medieval warfare, primarily because of tactical superiority, or because broader social and economic systems supported their importance. The answer varies by region and period. What remains undeniable is the significance of horses themselves. Remove the horse, and much of the system changes, perhaps completely. You begin noticing how deeply horses influence culture. Stories celebrate them. Songs praise them. Artists paint them. The horse becomes woven into imagination itself. Children dream of riding. Nobles compete to own exceptional animals. Travelers depend upon them. The horse is everywhere. One amusing reality remains unchanged despite centuries of progress. Even the finest horse occasionally decides to behave like a horse. A royal stable may contain animals worth fortunes, yet one of them will still become fascinated by a random bucket. Powerful kingdoms rise and fall. The horse investigates the bucket. There is something comforting about that consistency. As afternoon sunlight warms the countryside, you watch riders crossing fields beneath fluttering banners. The scene feels iconic. Horse and rider, movement and purpose, humanity and animal working together. The image will survive for centuries because it captures something fundamental. The partnership has become one of the defining relationships in history, and it continues evolving. Beyond the castle walls, another transformation is quietly unfolding. Most horses are not carrying knights. Most horses are working, pulling, hauling, plowing, transporting, supporting daily life in ways that rarely attract attention. Yet those ordinary jobs may be even more important than the famous ones. Because while kings and battles shape headlines, work shapes civilizations, and horses are about to become some of the hardest workers humanity has ever known. The night rides away. The banners disappear beyond the hills. The castle settles into evening silence, and as impressive as armored riders may seem, you begin noticing something important. Most horses are not participating in grand historical events. Most horses are working very hard. In fact, if medieval horses had formed a labor union, they probably would have requested significantly more vacation days. Because while kings receive monuments and generals receive biographies, horses spend centuries doing much of the heavy lifting that keeps civilization running. Quite literally, you travel through a farming region just after sunrise. Mist hangs low over the fields. Farmers are already awake. Wagons creak along dirt roads. Horses stand patiently beside barns, waiting for another day of labor. This is where much of history actually happens. Not in palaces, not on battlefields, in fields, workshops, forests, markets. The horse is becoming one of the most important engines of everyday life. One official historical development deserves special attention. During the medieval agricultural expansion across much of Europe, improvements such as the horse collar helped increase the efficiency of horse-powered farming. The horse collar may not sound exciting. It certainly does not inspire dramatic movie scenes. Yet historians often regard it as one of the most important practical innovations of the medieval period, because it allowed horses to pull heavier loads more comfortably and efficiently. Sometimes history changes because of brilliant ideas. Sometimes history changes because someone improves a strap. The horse does not judge. It simply appreciates breathing properly while working. You spend the morning watching farmers plow fields. Teams of horses move steadily across the soil. Furrows stretch behind them in neat lines. The work appears repetitive, but it matters enormously. Food supports populations. Populations support towns. Towns support trade. The horse contributes to every stage of the process. You begin understanding why horses become so valuable. They save time. They save labor. They increase productivity. The benefits ripple outward through entire societies. One fascinating little-known fact is that some large draft horses could pull astonishingly heavy loads, particularly when roads and conditions were favorable. Generations of selective breeding produced animals specifically designed for strength. Standing beside one of these horses feels humbling. The animal looks capable of pulling a small building if properly motivated, or at least a moderately sized barn. You would probably volunteer to help from a safe observational distance. As agriculture becomes more productive, trade expands. You travel along roads crowded with wagons carrying grain, timber, textiles, and tools. Horses pull the loads patiently across long distances. Every marketplace depends on them. Every growing town depends on them. Every merchant depends on them. The horse powers commerce. Without engines, without electricity, without fuel stations, just muscle, training, and an impressive appetite. The appetite is particularly impressive. You quickly discover that maintaining horses requires resources. They need food, water, shelter, care. The relationship is a partnership. Humans benefit from horses. Horses benefit from human support. Neither side succeeds entirely alone. As towns grow larger, horses take on additional roles. They transport building materials, deliver supplies, move products between workshops and markets. The horse becomes integrated into urban economies, not merely rural ones. You spend time in a busy market town where wagons arrive throughout the day. Horses stand patiently while goods are unloaded. Traders negotiate prices. Customers browse stalls. The entire scene depends upon movement, and movement depends upon horses. One humorous observation quickly becomes apparent. Traffic jams existed long before automobiles. The vehicles simply had different personalities. A stubborn horse blocking a narrow street can create surprisingly familiar levels of frustration. Some aspects of human civilization remain wonderfully consistent. Historians still debate whether agricultural improvements drove population growth, or whether growing populations encouraged agricultural innovation. As usual, the answer is probably both. More productive farms support more people. More people create demand for better farming methods. The cycle reinforces itself. The horse plays a central role in that cycle. You travel farther into forests where teams of horses haul enormous logs. The work is demanding. The terrain is difficult. Yet the animals perform tasks that would require many more people without their assistance. The economic value is enormous. Timber builds houses, ships, bridges, workshops. The horse helps move it all. One particularly interesting little-known fact involves horse-powered machinery. Before widespread industrialization, horses sometimes powered mills and other mechanical devices by walking in circular paths connected to equipment. The horse becomes a source of energy, not transportation, energy. The distinction matters. Long before engines dominate the world, horses help perform work that machines will later inherit. In a way, they prepare humanity for industrialization. Though they are probably unaware of their contribution, they remain focused on lunch, a sensible priority. As afternoon fades toward evening, you watch workers returning home along dusty roads. Horses pull wagons loaded with supplies. Farmers finish their tasks. Markets begin closing. The rhythm feels familiar, daily, ordinary, yet beneath that ordinary routine lies extraordinary influence. The horse is helping feed populations, support trade, build infrastructure, move resources, strengthen economies. Its contribution reaches far beyond warfare or prestige. In many ways, this labor may be the horse's greatest achievement, not because it is dramatic, because it is essential. Civilizations survive through ordinary work, and horses perform a remarkable amount of it. As darkness settles across the countryside, the roads gradually empty. Stable doors close. Lanterns glow softly in farmhouse windows. The horses rest. Tomorrow they will work again, and they will continue working for centuries. Yet beyond the oceans, new worlds are waiting. Worlds where horses disappeared thousands of years earlier. Worlds that are about to meet the horse once more. And when that reunion happens, history will change again in ways nobody on these quiet medieval roads could possibly imagine. The roads of Europe grow quieter behind you. The farms, markets, forests, and villages fade into memory. Ahead lies an ocean, a very large ocean, and unfortunately for everyone involved, including the horses, crossing it is not especially comfortable. You stand on the deck of a wooden sailing ship as waves roll endlessly beneath the hull. Salt spray fills the air. Ropes creak overhead. Sailors move across the deck performing tasks that appear dangerously casual. Meanwhile, below deck, several horses are experiencing what can only be described as a deeply disappointing travel experience. The horse has conquered grasslands. The horse has crossed deserts. The horse has climbed mountains. The horse is considerably less enthusiastic about being placed on a floating wooden box in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. Yet this journey matters, because the horse is about to change another continent. One official historical event marks the beginning of this transformation. In 1493, during the second voyage of Christopher Columbus, horses were among the animals transported from Europe to the Americas. The arrival was historically significant, not because horses had never existed there. Quite the opposite. Millions of years earlier, the ancestors of modern horses evolved in North America. Then they disappeared. Now they were returning. History occasionally enjoys dramatic plot twists. The horse leaves, changes much of the world, then comes home. You arrive in the Americas and immediately notice something remarkable. The horse is entering environments where people have lived for generations without it. Transportation systems already exist. Trade networks already exist. Cultures already thrive. The horse does not create civilization. Instead, it introduces new possibilities, and those possibilities spread rapidly. At first, horses remain relatively rare. They belong mainly to colonial settlements and expeditions. Yet animals escape. Others are traded. Some are captured. Gradually, horses begin spreading across landscapes that have not seen them for thousands of years. The process accelerates. You travel across open plains, where wild horse populations begin establishing themselves. Herds multiply. New generations adapt to local conditions. The sight feels strangely familiar. Wild horses running across North America. A return to ancient origins. Not the exact same horses that once lived there during prehistoric times, of course, but close enough to create one of history's most fascinating circles. One fascinating little-known fact is that some indigenous communities became extraordinarily skilled horse breeders and riders within a surprisingly short period of time after acquiring horses. The adaptation is impressive. Techniques spread. Knowledge spreads. Horse culture spreads. You spend time among communities whose lives are changing rapidly. The horse increases mobility. Hunting becomes more efficient in certain regions. Trade expands. Travel becomes easier across large territories. The impact varies from place to place. Different communities adopt horses differently. Yet the overall transformation is unmistakable. The horse once again changes humanity's relationship with distance. You begin recognizing a pattern. It happened on the Eurasian steppe. It happened within ancient empires. It happened throughout medieval societies. Now it is happening again. Give people horses and their world becomes larger. And somehow smaller. Larger because they can reach more places. Smaller because those places suddenly feel closer. The horse performs the same miracle over and over. Historians still debate the precise routes and speed by which horses spread across different parts of North America after their reintroduction. Archaeological evidence continues refining the timeline. New discoveries occasionally challenge older assumptions. History remains a living conversation. The puzzle keeps evolving. Meanwhile, the horses continue multiplying regardless of academic debates. You spend a day watching riders cross a vast prairie beneath an enormous sky. Their horses move confidently through grassland stretching to every horizon. The partnership feels natural, as though horse and rider belong together. Perhaps that feeling explains part of the horse's historical success. The relationship simply works. One amusing reality remains unchanged. No matter the continent, horses continue finding creative ways to investigate things they probably should not investigate. A horse encounters an unfamiliar object. The horse becomes curious. The horse touches it. The horse sometimes regrets that decision. Humanity's global expansion has apparently not altered equine curiosity. As European colonies expand, horses influence ranching, transportation, exploration, and agriculture throughout large portions of the Americas. New traditions emerge. New riding styles emerge. New economies emerge. The horse adapts to all of them. In South America, riders cross immense grasslands. In North America, horses become integral to life across vast regions. Everywhere they go, they leave an imprint, not just practical, cultural. Stories celebrate horses. Art depicts horses. Communities identify with horses. The animal becomes woven into identity itself. You spend an evening beside a campfire watching riders care for their animals beneath a sky filled with stars. The scene could belong to many centuries. The details change. The partnership remains recognizable. Trust, skill, cooperation, movement. The same themes continue repeating across continents. As darkness settles over the plains, herds graze quietly in the distance. Their silhouettes move through the moonlit grass. The horse has completed an extraordinary journey, from prehistoric grasslands to ancient empires to medieval kingdoms, across oceans, across cultures, across generations. And now, at the height of its global influence, the horse is helping connect worlds. Trade networks are growing. Cities are expanding. Roads are becoming busier than ever before. Soon, horse-powered transportation will reach its peak. Coaches will race along crowded routes. Commerce will flourish. Entire economies will depend on equine movement. The horse's greatest age is still ahead, and it is arriving at full speed. The oceans have been crossed. The grasslands have been connected. The horse now moves through a world that feels more linked together than ever before. Roads spread across countries. Trade routes grow busier. Cities expand. Merchants, travelers, and governments all demand the same thing. Faster movement. The horse is ready to provide it. You find yourself standing beside a busy coaching road during the 17th and 18th centuries. The morning air is cool. A layer of mist clings to the fields. In the distance, a coach approaches at surprising speed. The sound arrives first. Hooves striking packed earth. Wheels rattling. Drivers shouting instructions. Then the vehicle appears, bouncing enthusiastically over a road that clearly has not yet met modern suspension systems. The passengers do not look especially comfortable, but they are moving, and movement is what matters. One official historical development defines this era. Throughout Europe and parts of North America, organized stagecoach networks expanded dramatically during the 18th century, connecting towns and cities with increasingly regular transportation services. For the first time, Large numbers of ordinary travelers gain access to scheduled long-distance travel. The horse is making the world smaller once again. You climb aboard a coach and quickly discover that historical travel is often more romantic in paintings than in reality. Dust enters everything. Road conditions vary dramatically. Every bump introduces itself personally. Yet compared to walking, the experience feels miraculous. The coach covers in hours what earlier generations might have needed days to accomplish. The horse has become part of a transportation revolution. One fascinating little-known fact involves coaching inns. These establishments appeared along major routes and served as critical support centers where horses could be exchanged. Travelers could eat, and news could spread. Some inns became famous gathering places. Others became famous for terrible food. History contains both types. You stop at one of these inns during a long journey. Fresh horses wait in nearby stables. Stable workers move efficiently. Coaches arrive and depart on tight schedules. The operation resembles an airport, a much slower airport, with significantly more hay. But the principle feels familiar. People want reliable transportation. The horse provides it. As populations grow, commerce expands alongside travel. Merchants move goods between cities at increasing speed. Markets become more interconnected. Regional economies begin functioning as larger systems. The horse helps make all of it possible. You ride through bustling towns where wagons carry textiles, grain, tools, and imported goods. The roads remain crowded. Every cart, every delivery, every shipment, powered by horses. The scale becomes difficult to ignore. One city depends upon another. One region depends upon another. Trade creates connections. The horse supports those connections. You begin noticing how transportation changes culture. Newspapers spread more widely. Books circulate more efficiently. New ideas travel farther than before. Information moves alongside commerce. The horse carries both. A merchant may transport goods. A traveler may transport stories. A newspaper may transport ideas. The result is a more connected society. Historians still debate whether transportation improvements drove economic growth, or whether economic growth demanded transportation improvements. As with many historical questions, the answer is probably both. Growing economies need better transportation. Better transportation supports growing economies. The cycle continues. The horse stands at the center. You spend time in a growing city where horse traffic fills the streets. Delivery wagons move constantly. Private carriages weave through crowds. Market carts arrive from surrounding farms. The city feels alive and noisy, very noisy. Modern people often imagine that urban noise began with automobiles. The horses would like a word. A city filled with thousands of horses generates a remarkable amount of sound and smell, particularly smell. Urban planners become unexpectedly familiar with both subjects. One amusing reality of horse-powered cities is that traffic jams existed long before cars. Narrow streets, crowded intersections, and stubborn animals could create delays that would feel surprisingly familiar to modern commuters. Humanity's relationship with traffic appears timeless. Only the technology changes. The frustration remains remarkably durable. You travel farther into the late 18th and early 19th centuries. Roads improve. Bridges improve. Transportation networks expand. The horse reaches an extraordinary level of importance. Governments depend on it. Businesses depend on it. Families depend on it. Communication depends on it. The animal has become woven into the fabric of everyday life. One particularly impressive development is the expansion of postal systems. Letters move between cities with increasing reliability. Schedules become predictable. Predictability changes expectations. People begin expecting communication, expecting news, expecting connection. The horse helps create those expectations. And once expectations exist, societies rarely return to earlier standards. You ride through countryside illuminated by afternoon sunlight. Coaches pass regularly. Merchants travel confidently. Travelers discuss distant destinations as though they are routine. The psychological impact is significant. Distance feels manageable. The world feels accessible. The horse deserves much of the credit. For thousands of years, it has been humanity's solution to the problem of movement. And now that solution has reached its peak. As evening approaches, another coach disappears down a winding road. Fresh horses wait at the next station. Passengers settle into their seats. The journey continues. The horse has never been more integrated into human civilization, never more essential, never more widespread. Yet beyond the horizon, something is beginning to change. Factories are growing larger. Inventors are experimenting. Steam power is attracting attention. The first hints of a new age are appearing. Most people do not recognize the threat. Why would they? The horse has dominated transportation for thousands of years. It seems permanent, unshakable, almost inevitable. But history rarely leaves anything unchanged forever. And somewhere in the distance, faint beneath the familiar rhythm of hoofbeats, a locomotive whistle is preparing to announce the arrival of a powerful new rival. At first, the horse hardly notices. Why would it? For thousands of years, it has carried travelers, pulled wagons, supported empires, fed economies, delivered messages, and connected continents. Entire civilizations depend upon it. The horse has become so essential that many people cannot imagine a world without it. And honestly, from their perspective, that seems perfectly reasonable. You stand in the middle of a growing 19th century city. Streets are crowded. Wagons roll in every direction. Delivery carts squeeze through traffic. Carriages transport passengers between neighborhoods. Everywhere you look, horses are working. Thousands of them. Perhaps tens of thousands. The city moves because they move. The scale is astonishing. A modern visitor might notice the architecture, or the fashion, or the absence of smartphones. A historian might notice something else. Nearly every aspect of urban life depends on horsepower. One official historical development captures this era perfectly. During the 19th century, major cities such as London, New York, and Paris relied on enormous populations of working horses to sustain transportation, commerce, and public services. The horse is no longer simply part of civilization. In many ways, it is civilization's engine. You spend the morning following a delivery wagon through crowded streets. The driver knows every route. The horses know every turn. Shops receive supplies. Markets receive food. Factories receive materials. The system functions because horses keep moving. Without them, the city slows dramatically, perhaps even stops. One fascinating little-known fact is that some large cities housed hundreds of thousands of horses at their peak. Supporting these animals required vast quantities of feed, stable space, and labor. The logistics are mind-boggling. Entire industries exist simply to support the animals that support other industries. Civilization has become a giant horse-powered machine. You begin noticing how deeply horses influence daily routines. Milk deliveries arrive by horse. Mail arrives by horse. Construction materials arrive by horse. Passengers travel by horse. Even emergency services often rely on horses. The animal's reach extends into nearly every corner of urban life. The horse has achieved something remarkable. It has become invisible, not because people cannot see it, because they see it everywhere. What exists everywhere often becomes easy to overlook. You ride beyond the city into agricultural regions where horses remain equally important. Farmers depend on them. Merchants depend on them. Communities depend on them. The horse occupies a unique position in history. No other domesticated animal has combined mobility, strength, speed, endurance, and adaptability quite so effectively. You begin understanding why the horse's influence lasted so long. It solved too many problems. Transportation problem, horse. Communication problem, horse. Agricultural problem, horse. Trade problem, horse. The horse became humanity's favorite answer. One humorous reality remains unchanged despite centuries of progress. Even highly trained horses occasionally decide that a perfectly ordinary object is somehow suspicious. A wagon wheel, a hat, a puddle. The list is surprisingly long. Civilization may be advancing rapidly, but horses continue reminding humans that confidence and caution can coexist beautifully. You spend time at a busy postal depot where horse-drawn vehicles arrive throughout the day. Letters move across regions. Newspapers spread information. Businesses coordinate activities. The horse remains at the center of communication. just as it was centuries earlier. Only the scale has increased dramatically. Historians still debate whether the 19th century represented the absolute peak of horse influence, or whether earlier eras exercised comparable dependence through different systems. The discussion is fascinating. Yet regardless of the exact answer, one fact remains clear. Human civilization has never relied more broadly on horses than during this period. The animal is everywhere. Roads become busier. Trade becomes faster. Cities become larger. The horse supports it all. You begin noticing another interesting development. Horse breeding has become highly specialized. Different breeds serve different purposes. Draft horses pull heavy loads. Carriage horses transport passengers. Race horses compete for prestige and entertainment. Farm horses support agriculture. The diversity reflects centuries of refinement. Humans have spent generations shaping horses for specific tasks, and horses have spent generations helping humans achieve specific goals. The partnership reaches extraordinary complexity. You spend an afternoon watching racehorses train. Their speed is breathtaking. Crowds gather to admire them. Meanwhile, elsewhere, draft horses haul freight through muddy streets. Different jobs, same species. Few animals demonstrate such versatility. As evening approaches, gas lamps begin illuminating city streets. Wagons continue moving through the darkness. Horses continue working. The city never truly sleeps. Neither do many of its horses. The demand remains constant. The economy keeps expanding. The world keeps moving. The horse keeps making that movement possible. And yet something strange is happening. Far from the crowded streets and busy stables, new technologies are gathering strength. Railroads are spreading. Steam engines are improving. Inventors are becoming increasingly ambitious. Most people still trust horses. For good reason. The horse has earned that trust. It has carried humanity for thousands of years. It seems impossible to replace. But history has a habit of surprising even the most successful technologies. Tonight, as the city settles beneath a blanket of smoke and lamplight, the horse appears stronger than ever, more important than ever, more necessary than ever, which makes what comes next all the more remarkable, because just beyond the horizon, the machine age is preparing to challenge the greatest transportation partner humanity has ever known. The challenge does not arrive all at once. History rarely works that way. There is no dramatic afternoon when every horse receives a formal letter announcing that machines have entered the competition. Instead, the change begins quietly. A railway line appears in one region. A steam-powered machine appears in another. A few curious inventors attract attention. Most people continue relying on horses. And for a while, that seems perfectly sensible. You stand beside a railway station in the early 19th century. The platform is crowded with spectators. Some are excited. Others are skeptical. A few simply look confused. Then the locomotive arrives. Steam hisses. Metal rattles. Smoke drifts into the sky. The machine moves with a power that feels unfamiliar. The horse has finally met a rival. One official historical event symbolizes this turning point. In 1825, the opening of the Stockton and Darlington Railway in England demonstrated the growing potential of steam-powered transportation and helped launch the railway age. The implications are enormous. For thousands of years, land transportation has depended largely on animals. Now something new is possible. A machine can move freight. A machine can move passengers. A machine can move faster than many horse-drawn alternatives. The world begins changing. You watch the train disappear into the distance. The spectators remain silent for a moment. Then conversations begin. Some people are impressed. Others remain unconvinced. After all, horses still dominate daily life, and they will continue dominating it for quite some time. The transition is not immediate. It is gradual, complicated, messy. Like most major historical transformations, one fascinating little-known fact is that many early railways actually used horses before steam locomotives became practical. Horses pulled wagons along tracks because rails reduced friction and improved efficiency. In a strange way, horses helped create the system that would eventually compete with them. History occasionally possesses a sense of irony. The horse builds part of its own replacement. You travel through industrial regions where factories are expanding rapidly. Goods move in larger quantities. Markets grow more interconnected. Demand increases. Railroads prove exceptionally good at moving large volumes over long distances. The horse cannot easily compete with that scale, not because the horse has become worse, because the machine has become very good. That distinction matters. The horse is not failing. Technology is advancing. The two things are not the same. You spend time with merchants who now use both systems. Railroads carry goods between major cities. Horses distribute those goods locally. The relationship is surprisingly cooperative at first. The train handles long distances. The horse handles everything else. Both remain important. Historians still debate whether railroads transform society primarily through transportation improvements, economic growth, or social change. The answer is probably all three. Transportation affects economics. Economics affects society. Everything connects. The horse has spent thousands of years teaching humanity that lesson. You begin noticing that many people continue trusting horses more than machines. Early locomotives can be unreliable. Roads remain poor in many regions. Fuel and infrastructure create limitations. Meanwhile, the horse remains dependable. Feed it. Care for it. Treat it reasonably well. It usually understands the assignment. That reliability keeps horses relevant. One amusing reality of technological change is that humans often assume new inventions will immediately replace old ones. They rarely do. Older technologies linger, adapt, find new purposes. The horse proves especially resilient. You ride through a city where railroads operate nearby, yet the streets remain crowded with horse-drawn wagons. Deliveries still depend on horses. Construction still depends on horses. The machine age arrives. The horse keeps working. The coexistence lasts for decades. You spend an afternoon at a freight yard watching goods transferred from rail cars onto wagons. The process reveals something important. Even revolutionary technologies require support systems. A train can transport cargo across a continent. Someone still has to deliver it to the final destination. For a long time, that someone is usually a horse. The animal remains essential, just in a different role. One particularly interesting little-known fact involves urban horse populations during industrialization. In some cities, horse numbers actually increased during the early phases of industrial growth because expanding economies generated more transportation demand. The horse experiences a temporary boom. The machine creates new work before eventually reducing it. History enjoys these complications. Simple stories rarely survive close inspection. As decades pass, however, the balance begins shifting. Steam power improves. Rail networks expand. Industrial production accelerates. The advantages become harder to ignore. The horse continues contributing, but it no longer stands alone. You begin noticing a subtle psychological change. For thousands of years, speed belonged to horses. Now speed belongs increasingly to machines. The shift influences expectations. People start imagining transportation differently. Distance feels different. Possibility feels different. The horse helped create a world that now dreams beyond horses. There is something almost poetic about that. The partnership succeeded so completely that it helped inspire alternatives. As evening settles over an industrial landscape, factory lights glow against the darkening sky. Trains move across distant tracks. Horse-drawn wagons continue navigating city streets. Old and new coexist. Neither fully dominates. Yet the future is becoming clearer. The machine age is gathering momentum. Soon, another invention will arrive. Smaller than a train. More flexible than a train. Capable of traveling roads rather than rails. The automobile. And when that machine appears in large numbers, the horse will face its greatest challenge yet. Not because the horse has changed. Because humanity has. The locomotive whistles fade into the distance. Factory lights glow against the night sky. Railroads continue expanding across continents. Yet the greatest challenge to the horse is not arriving on rails. It is arriving on wheels. Smaller wheels. Faster wheels. And eventually, very noisy wheels. You stand on a dusty road at the beginning of the 20th century. Horses pull wagons past storefronts. Riders travel between farms. Delivery carts move through town exactly as they have for generations. Then an automobile rattles by. The machine is loud, unpredictable. and according to many observers of the time, probably a passing trend. History has heard that prediction before. It rarely ages well. At first, automobiles seem impractical. They are expensive. They break down frequently. Fuel supplies remain limited. Roads are often poor. Meanwhile, horses continue doing what horses do best: working, transporting, supporting daily life. Most people trust them. For good reason. The horse has spent thousands of years earning that trust. One official historical development captures the scale of change ahead. During the early 20th century, mass production techniques, most famously associated with Henry Ford and the Model T, helped make automobiles increasingly affordable for ordinary families. The consequences are enormous, not immediate, but enormous. The automobile begins entering spaces once dominated by horses, slowly at first, then steadily, then almost everywhere. You spend time on farms where tractors begin replacing animal labor. The transition is uneven. Some farmers adopt machines quickly. Others remain loyal to horses. Both choices make sense. Machines offer efficiency. Horses offer familiarity. The decision is rarely simple. Historians still debate whether economic pressures, technological innovation, or cultural change played the largest role in the decline of working horses. The answer likely includes all three. The forces overlap. Each strengthens the others. The horse finds itself caught in the middle of a transformation larger than any individual farmer or rider. One fascinating little-known fact is that horses remained surprisingly important in many parts of the world, long after automobiles became common elsewhere. In remote regions, difficult terrain often favored horses for decades. Technology spreads unevenly. A machine that works perfectly in one place may struggle in another. The horse understands this instinctively. Mountains do not care about marketing campaigns. You travel through rural communities where horse-drawn wagons still share roads with automobiles. The contrast feels almost surreal. One vehicle represents thousands of years of partnership. The other represents the future. For a while, they coexist, old and new traveling side by side. The sight becomes one of the defining images of the era. You begin noticing another important change. As horses leave some traditional jobs, they begin entering new ones: sport, competition, recreation. The horse is not disappearing. It is adapting. Humans are adapting as well. The relationship evolves. You spend an afternoon at an equestrian event where riders train with remarkable dedication. Show jumping, endurance riding, dressage, racing. Different disciplines celebrate different qualities: speed, grace, precision, partnership. The horse continues demonstrating abilities that machines cannot quite replicate, not because machines lack power, because horses offer something else: connection. One amusing reality remains wonderfully unchanged. No matter how carefully planned the event, a horse occasionally decides that today's agenda should include personal improvisation. The crowd expects elegance. The horse notices a bird. History continues. You watch riders working patiently with their animals. Communication becomes subtle. Small movements carry meaning. Trust develops through repetition. The partnership survives because it offers more than utility. It offers experience, companionship, shared effort. For thousands of years, humans depended on horses. Now many humans simply enjoy being around them. That distinction changes everything. One particularly interesting development involves therapeutic programs that incorporate horses into educational and rehabilitation settings. Research continues exploring these relationships, but many participants describe powerful experiences. The horse finds new roles, new purposes, new ways to contribute. Its story does not end when machines arrive. It simply changes direction. You travel through countryside where riders follow trails beneath golden afternoon sunlight. There is no urgent message to deliver, no freight to haul, no army waiting. The ride itself becomes the goal. That would have seemed strange to many people in earlier centuries. Most historical riders traveled because they needed to. Modern riders often travel because they want to. The horse becomes a companion rather than a necessity, and somehow, that may deepen the bond. You begin reflecting on how remarkable this transition is. Many technologies vanish when they become obsolete. Nobody forms emotional attachments to outdated tax records. At least hopefully not. Yet horses remain beloved, admired, respected. People continue investing time, energy, and resources into maintaining the relationship. That persistence says something important. The connection was never purely practical. If it were, it would have disappeared entirely. Instead, it survived. As evening settles across rolling fields, horses graze peacefully near fences while automobiles move along distant roads. Two eras occupy the same landscape, one older, one newer, both shaping the world. The horse no longer dominates transportation, no longer dominates agriculture, no longer dominates commerce, yet its influence remains visible everywhere. And in the next part of our journey, you will discover just how deeply the horse still lives within the modern world. Hidden in language, culture, technology, and even the way humanity imagines freedom itself. The roads are quieter now. The great freight wagons have mostly disappeared. The relay stations have fallen silent. The armies of mounted messengers, merchants, farmers, explorers, and travelers have faded into history. And yet, strangely enough, the horse is still everywhere. You simply have to know where to look. You stand in the modern world beneath the glow of city lights. Cars move along highways. Airplanes cross the night sky. Digital messages travel around the planet in fractions of a second. At first glance, horses appear to belong entirely to the past. But the closer you look, the more traces you find. The horse left hoofprints across civilization so deep that many remain visible centuries later. One official historical reality recognized by historians is that horses profoundly influenced the development of transportation networks, trade systems, military organization, agriculture, communication, and settlement patterns throughout human history. Many modern systems evolved from foundations originally shaped during the horse age. The horse helped build the framework. The modern world expanded upon it. You begin noticing evidence in unexpected places. Roads often follow routes established long ago. Towns frequently grew around travel corridors where horses once moved goods and people. Trade patterns sometimes reflect decisions made centuries earlier, when equine transportation determined what was practical. The horse may no longer pull most vehicles, but it helped design the map. That is quite a legacy for an animal primarily interested in grass. You walk through a modern city and discover another reminder. Language. Horse terminology survives everywhere. Horsepower, reins, spur, bridle, harness. Countless expressions originated in equestrian culture. People use them daily without thinking about their origins. The horse remains hidden inside ordinary conversation, quietly influencing vocabulary long after leaving many of its traditional jobs. One fascinating little-known fact comes from modern genetics. Scientists can now analyze ancient horse DNA and compare it with modern breeds, revealing how thousands of years of human breeding shaped horse populations around the world. The horse carries history within its own body, a living archive, a biological record of partnership. The idea feels strangely beautiful. Every generation leaves traces behind. Some appear in books, some appear in buildings, some appear in living creatures. You begin reflecting on the long journey you have taken. The Ice Age grasslands, the first hunters, the early herders, the riders of the steppe, the chariots of Bronze Age kingdoms, the couriers of great empires, the knights of medieval Europe, the farmers, the merchants, the explorers crossing oceans, the crowded cities powered by horses, the arrival of railroads, the rise of automobiles. Each chapter feels distinct, yet one figure appears again and again. The horse, always present, always adapting, always moving alongside humanity. Historians still debate whether horses changed human history more profoundly than any other domesticated animal. It is a difficult question. Many animals transformed civilizations in important ways, yet few combined mobility, endurance, intelligence, strength, and versatility so effectively. Few shaped communication, trade, warfare, agriculture, exploration, and culture simultaneously. The horse occupies a category of its own. You spend time watching modern riders train in a quiet arena, The relationship remains familiar despite the centuries separating them from the first horse tamers. Patience, observation, trust, communication, the same themes continue. Technology transformed, governments transformed, economies transformed. The partnership endured. Perhaps that endurance explains why horses remain so powerful in human imagination. They represent movement, possibility, freedom, adventure. The symbols persist because the history behind them is real. For thousands of years, horses expanded what humans believed possible. One humorous thought occurs to you. If a horse from ancient Persia, medieval Europe, or the Mongol steppe somehow appeared today, it might be confused by smartphones, airplanes, and electric vehicles, but it would probably recognize a modern rider immediately. The essentials have not changed. A person reaches out, a horse responds. The conversation continues, and now, as our long journey nears its end, the pace begins to slow. The roads become quieter. The centuries drift farther away. The noise of history softens. You return once more to an open grassland beneath a vast evening sky, the same kind of landscape where everything began. A herd grazes peacefully in the distance. The wind moves through the grass. The stars begin appearing one by one overhead. Nothing feels hurried anymore. Nothing feels urgent. The great empires have faded. The trade routes have fallen silent. The crowded cities have grown distant. Only the horses remain. And perhaps that is fitting, because throughout this story, they were always the constant presence. Generations came and went. Kingdoms rose and fell. Technologies appeared and disappeared. The horse simply continued moving forward, steady, patient, enduring. Now the night grows deeper. The grasslands become silver beneath moonlight. The herd drifts slowly across the horizon. Their movements grow softer, smaller, more distant. Take a deep breath. Let the centuries settle. Let the roads disappear. Let the hoofbeats fade into the darkness. You have crossed thousands of years together. You have followed hunters, herders, riders, emperors, farmers, explorers, and dreamers. And now there is nowhere left to travel. Only quiet fields, only starlight, only the gentle whisper of wind moving through endless grass. The horses continue grazing beneath the moon, calm, untroubled, timeless, and as the final traces of the journey drift away into the night, you can simply rest beside them, safe, still, and wonderfully far from the worries of tomorrow. The stars shine softly overhead. The grass sways gently below. The horses become silhouettes. The silhouettes become shadows, and the shadows slowly dissolve into the peaceful darkness. Good night.